What did the Buddha really teach? And why do his words still touch hearts after more than 2.5 millennia? In an age where we can reach anyone through a screen, yet feel more disconnected than ever, this question is not just ancient curiosity, it's deeply relevant. People today live surrounded by abundance and information, yet inside, many carry the same confusion, anxiety, and emptiness that the Buddha saw in his own time. The world changes, but the human mind, with all its desires, fears, and doubts, remains much the same. And that is why the Buddha's teachings still matter. When Siddhartha Gautama, who would later become known as the Buddha, lived in ancient India, society was already full of philosophical systems, gods, rituals, and dogmas. But the young prince who left his palace was not seeking to start another religion. He was looking for a way to end suffering, not by escaping life, but by understanding it. He was not a prophet, delivering divine orders, nor a savior who promised heaven after death. He was a human being who looked deeply into his own mind, saw the nature of all things clearly, and awoke to a truth beyond birth and death. This awakening was not a supernatural event. It was a realization so profound and simple that it can be experienced by anyone who dares to look directly at reality without illusions. The Buddha's message has survived centuries not because it belongs to a single culture or belief system, but because it speaks directly to the universal condition of being human. We all experience joy and loss, hope and despair, pleasure and pain. We all seek happiness, but often don't know where to find it. The Buddha pointed out that true happiness cannot be found in things that constantly change: wealth, reputation, relationships, or even our own thoughts and emotions. He taught that the source of our suffering lies not outside of us, but within our own craving and ignorance. And once we see this truth clearly, freedom becomes possible right here, in this very life. Today, when the word Buddha is heard, many imagine a calm figure sitting in meditation, surrounded by peace. But that image, beautiful as it is, often hides the depth of what the Buddha truly offered. He didn't ask people to worship him. He invited them to see for themselves. His teachings, known as the Dhamma, are like a mirror, not to admire, but to reflect and understand our own mind. The path he revealed is not about blind faith, it's about direct experience, about testing the truth through one's own observation and wisdom. This video is not about Buddhist rituals or religious ceremonies. It's about returning to the essence of what the Buddha taught, a way to live with awareness, kindness, and clarity in a world full of confusion. The goal is not to convert anyone or ask for belief, but to share insights that can help anyone, regardless of religion or background, to see life more clearly and suffer less. Because the teachings of the Buddha are not ancient relics locked in temples or scriptures. They are living principles that can transform how we see ourselves and the world around us. So, as we begin this journey through the core teachings of the Buddha, let us pause for a moment. Take a breath. Feel the rise and fall of life in this single moment. The Buddha once said, "Within this fathom-long body and mind lies the world, the origin of the world, the cessation of the world, and the path leading to its cessation." His message is simple, yet it points to the deepest truth. Everything we need to understand life and free ourselves from suffering is already here, within us. This is the heart of his teaching. Not to follow blindly, but to awaken. Not to escape the world, but to see it as it is. And perhaps, as we listen with an open heart, these ancient words will begin to sound not distant or foreign, but like a timeless echo of something we have always known deep inside, that peace, wisdom, and freedom are possible, right here and now, under the shade of the great Bodhi tree. More than 25 centuries ago, a man sat still in deep meditation. His name was Siddhartha Gautama, a seeker who had left behind his palace, wealth, family, and privilege to find the truth that lies beyond pleasure and pain. For 6 long years, he wandered, practiced austerities, and pushed his body to the edge of death, only to realize that neither indulgence in luxury nor torture of the body could bring true freedom. That night, as dawn approached and the morning star rose, something within him awoke, not as a divine revelation from above, but as a clear seeing of how suffering begins, how it continues, and how it can end. From that awakening, the Buddha was born, not as a god, but as one who fully understood the human condition. The Buddha's mission was simple, yet boundless: to teach the path that leads out of suffering. His first words after enlightenment were not meant to create a religion. They were a compassionate call to humanity. He said that life, as we live it, is full of dukkha, a Pali word often translated as suffering, but which actually carries a much deeper meaning. Dukkha is not only the pain of sickness, aging, and death. It is also the subtle unease, the dissatisfaction, the quiet restlessness that lingers even when everything seems fine. It is the discomfort of wanting what we don't have, fearing what we might lose, and clinging to what can never last. We all know dukkha intimately, though we might not call it by that name. It is the hollow feeling that follows excitement when a dream is achieved, the anxiety that hides behind love. Because we fear its loss, the discontent that arises even in success because the mind always wants more. We live chasing moments of pleasure, thinking they will fill the emptiness, yet the more we chase, the more the emptiness grows. The Buddha saw that this endless cycle of desire and disappointment is not a flaw in the world, but a misunderstanding within our own minds. He understood that suffering has a cause, that it is not random or fated, and that cause is craving, ta in Pali, the thirst that keeps us bound to what is pleasant and repelled by what is unpleasant. We crave for life to be different, for our bodies to stay young, for people to treat us the way we wish, for the world to align with our hopes. But everything changes, and so we suffer. The Buddha realized that as long as we cling to the idea that happiness comes from getting what we want and avoiding what we don't, the wheel of suffering will keep turning endlessly. Yet he did not stop at diagnosing the problem. His genius and compassion lay in showing that this cycle can be broken. He said, "I teach suffering and the end of suffering." Just as a doctor understands illness to offer a cure, the Buddha understood dukkha to reveal a path to freedom. That path was not about escaping the world or repressing desire through force. It was about understanding desire so deeply that its grip naturally dissolves. Freedom, he discovered, is not somewhere far away. It begins when the mind sees clearly how it binds itself. In the modern world, where suffering takes the form of stress, insecurity, and loneliness, the Buddha's discovery remains as relevant as ever. We are told that happiness lies in achievement, beauty, possessions, and recognition, and we spend our lives running toward them, only to find that peace still eludes us. The Buddha's teaching reverses this search. Instead of running outward, it invites us to look inward and see how craving, fear, and ignorance create the world of sorrow we live in. When we see this truth, not as an idea, but as a lived experience, something shifts. The burden begins to lighten. The Buddha's mission was not to promise a heaven after death, but to show that liberation can be realized here and now, in this very body, in this very mind. He called it nibbana, the extinguishing of the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion. It is not a mystical state reserved for saints. It is the natural peace that appears when the mind no longer burns with craving. So, the Buddha walked from village to village for 45 years, barefoot under the sun and rain, speaking to kings and beggars, monks and mothers, thieves and scholars. He never claimed to save anyone. He only pointed the way. You yourselves must strive, he said. The Tathagata only shows the path. His mission was not about belief or conversion, but about awakening the wisdom already sleeping within every human heart. He knew that if one person could truly see the nature of suffering, that person would naturally live with compassion, patience, and clarity, and that alone could change the world more than any sermon or ritual. Even now, in our age of constant noise and endless distractions, his mission continues. Each time we pause to observe our breath instead of reacting blindly, we are walking the same path, he discovered. Each moment of understanding, forgiveness, or letting go is a small awakening, a flicker of light in the darkness of ignorance. And as that light grows, suffering loses its power. The Buddha's mission was never to create followers, but to awaken free beings, people who understand life as it truly is, who can live with wisdom instead of fear, and compassion instead of desire. To end suffering is not to erase pain from life. It is to understand it so deeply that it no longer controls us. That is the liberation the Buddha found under the Bodhi tree, and that is the same freedom that still waits quietly in every heart willing to look within. After his enlightenment, when the Buddha met his first 5 disciples in the deer park at Sarnath, he did not speak of miracles, nor did he describe any divine vision. Instead, he spoke with the simplicity and precision of a physician. He said that just as a doctor must first recognize the disease, then discover its cause, understand that it can be cured, and finally prescribe a treatment, so too must a human being understand the nature of suffering to become free. This understanding became the foundation of all his teachings, known as the Four Noble Truths, truths not invented by him, but discovered through direct insight into the nature of life. The first noble truth is the truth of dukkha, often translated as suffering, but in reality it is much broader than the pain we normally associate with that word. Dukkha is the unease that pervades all conditioned existence, the subtle tension in our constant struggle against impermanence. Everything we experience, from joy to sorrow, from health to illness, from youth to old age, carries within it the seed of dissatisfaction. Even pleasure itself becomes dukkha because it fades, leaving behind the longing for more. The Buddha was not pessimistic when he declared that life is dukkha. He was being profoundly realistic. He was describing the human condition exactly as it is, the bittersweet nature of a world that is always changing, always slipping through our fingers. When we eat a delicious meal, when we fall in love, when we hold a newborn child, these moments are beautiful, but they cannot be held forever. They pass, and in their passing, we feel the sting of loss. That is dukkha, not because the world is cruel, but because we cling to what cannot last. The second noble truth reveals the cause of this suffering, and that cause is ta, craving. Thirst, the relentless desire for things to be a certain way. We crave pleasant experiences, we crave to avoid pain, we crave to become someone or to not be someone. This craving operates silently, beneath almost every thought and action. It is what drives us to chase success, to fear failure, to compare ourselves with others, and to cling to fleeting pleasures. The Buddha saw that this thirst is endless because it feeds on ignorance, the ignorance of thinking that happiness lies in what is impermanent. When we do not understand the changing nature of things, we keep reaching for more, believing that the next possession, the next relationship, the next achievement will finally complete us. But the moment we get it, the mind moves again, unsatisfied, restless, desiring something else. Craving creates a constant hunger that no experience can truly satisfy, and this is why we suffer. Yet the Buddha did not stop there. The third noble truth brings a message of hope, Nirodha, the cessation of suffering. Just as fire goes out when the fuel is exhausted, suffering ceases when craving is extinguished. This does not mean annihilation or emptiness. It means freedom. The end of craving is not the end of feeling or living, but the end of bondage to the endless wanting. When the mind no longer grasps, it becomes still, luminous, and at peace. This state is called nibbana, the cooling of the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion. The Buddha described it not as a faraway paradise, but as the peace that arises when the heart is free from clinging. To realize nibbana is to experience reality without distortion, to see things as they truly are, impermanent, unsatisfactory, and without a fixed self. When we understand this deeply, not just intellectually but through direct insight, we taste a freedom beyond words, a peace that is unshakable even amid life's storms. The fourth noble truth is the path leading to the end of suffering, known as the Noble Eightfold Path. It is not a commandment or a list of moral rules, but a way of training the mind, speech, and actions so that wisdom naturally blossoms. The Buddha compared this path to a raft that helps us cross the river of suffering. Once we reach the other shore, we no longer need to carry the raft on our back. The path has 8 interconnected factors, divided into 3 essential areas of cultivation: wisdom, morality, and mental discipline. The first 2 factors, right view and right intention, belong to the realm of wisdom. Right view is the understanding that everything arises and passes away according to causes and conditions. Nothing exists independently, not even the self we cling to. It is seeing that our suffering comes from craving and ignorance, and that liberation lies in understanding things as they are. Right intention is the commitment to let go of ill will, cruelty, and selfish desire. It is the intention to act out of kindness, compassion, and clarity, not out of greed or hatred. The next three factors, right speech, right action, and right livelihood, form the foundation of morality or sila. They train us to live in a way that supports inner peace rather than disturbs it. Right speech means speaking truthfully, gently, and with purpose. Words can heal or harm. The Buddha urged that they be used to bring understanding, not division. Right action means refraining from killing, stealing, and harmful conduct. It is about respect for life and for the dignity of others. Right livelihood means earning a living without causing harm to other beings. It encourages a life of simplicity and integrity, where our work supports both our survival and our spiritual growth. The final three factors, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, belong to the realm of meditation or samadhi. Right effort is the continuous cultivation of wholesome states and the letting go of unwholesome ones. It is not about force, but about care. Nurturing the mind like a gardener tends to a garden. Right mindfulness is the heart of Buddhist practice. To be fully aware of the body, feelings, thoughts, and mental states without clinging or aversion. It means living awake, seeing each moment clearly as it arises and passes. Right concentration is the collected, tranquil state of mind that arises when mindfulness deepens, a mind so still and focused that it sees reality as it truly is, without distortion. Together, these 8 factors form a complete path, practical, ethical, and deeply transformative. The Buddha called it the middle way because it avoids the extremes of self-indulgence and self-denial. It is a way of balance, leading step by step from confusion to clarity, from restlessness to stillness, from ignorance to wisdom. What makes the Four Noble Truths timeless is their universality. They do not depend on culture, belief, or nationality, whether one calls oneself Buddhist or not. These truths describe the condition of the human mind. Everyone suffers. Everyone desires happiness. Everyone can understand the cause of their pain and discover the way to end it. The Buddha did not ask anyone to believe in him. He asked them to see for themselves. He who sees the Dhamma, he said, sees me. In this sense, the Four Noble Truths are not doctrines to memorize, but realities to be lived. They invite us to observe our own minds and lives, to notice how craving arises, how it creates tension, and how, when we release it even for a moment, there is peace. Each time we recognize this pattern, we take one step closer to the freedom the Buddha discovered. And that freedom, quiet and profound, is not something distant or reserved for monks and forests. It is here, within reach of anyone willing to look honestly into their own experience. Thus, the Four Noble Truths are not merely the heart of the Buddha's teaching. They are the heart of human awakening. They are a mirror held up to the world and to ourselves, showing both the wound and the way to healing. When we understand them deeply, life no longer feels like a chain of problems to be solved, but as a living process to be understood. And in that understanding, a new kind of joy arises, not the fragile joy of getting what we want, but the serene joy of knowing that we no longer need to cling to anything at all. Among all the truths the Buddha discovered, none is more revolutionary or more misunderstood than his teaching on Anatta, the doctrine of non-self. It was this insight that shattered the deepest illusions of the human mind and opened the door to real freedom. Before the Buddha, many spiritual teachers taught that within every person there exists an eternal, unchanging soul, a divine spark that continues unchanged through time, carrying identity from one life to another. The Buddha looked deeply into this belief and found it to be a comforting illusion. What he saw was far more subtle, far more liberating. That what we call a self is not a fixed essence but a constantly changing process, a stream of causes and conditions flowing moment by moment. When the Buddha examined his own experience, he did not find any core entity that could rightly be called I or mine. He found only the play of 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, rising and passing away endlessly, dependent on causes. The body changes from birth to death, never the same for even an instant. Feelings appear and vanish like clouds. Thoughts come uninvited and disappear without a trace. Even consciousness, the awareness that seems so intimate, shifts and flickers with each moment of contact with the world. Seeing this, the Buddha realized that clinging to any of these as me or mine is the root of suffering. Because whatever we try to hold as self inevitably changes, and change brings loss, and loss brings pain. To say there is no permanent self does not mean that nothing exists. It means that existence is dynamic, interdependent, and without a center. It is like a flame. The light appears continuous, but it is in fact a rapid process of burning fuel, a series of transformations happening too quickly for the eye to see. Similarly, what we call a person is a living process of causes and conditions, biological, psychological, social, karmic, all interacting and evolving. There is continuity, but no permanence. There is pattern, but no unchanging core. This realization was not meant to be a philosophical puzzle, but a medicine for the mind. For it is our attachment to the idea of a fixed self that fuels pride, fear, jealousy, and despair. We build identities and defend them fiercely, saying, "This is who I am," or "This is mine." And when life threatens those identities, when beauty fades, when success declines, when relationships end, we suffer as though we ourselves were being destroyed. But when we see that the self is not a solid thing to protect, but a flowing process to understand, the struggle begins to soften. The walls of ego start to dissolve, and in their place arises a deep humility and compassion. Imagine for a moment the ocean and its waves. Each wave has its own shape, its own rhythm, its own brief life, but none of them exist apart from the ocean. The wave cannot say, "I am separate," because its very being is the movement of the ocean itself. In the same way, the Buddha taught, we are like waves in the vast ocean of conditions. We appear, live, and dissolve, but there is no permanent wave to be found. Understanding this brings not despair, but a profound sense of connection. We see that we are not isolated fragments, but expressions of the great flow of life. The boundaries between self and other grow thin, and compassion naturally arises. For how can one harm another when one sees that there is no true division between them? This insight into non-self also reveals the meaning of liberation. As long as we cling to the idea of I, we are bound by fear. Fear of death, fear of loss, fear of the unknown. But when the illusion of self fades, death itself loses its terror. Because there is no fixed being to die, life and death are seen as movements of the same river. The Buddha once said, just as a flame cannot be traced once the lamp is extinguished, so too the liberated one cannot be measured in terms of existence or non-existence. It is not that they vanish into nothingness, but that the very framework of being and non-being no longer applies. In our everyday life, this teaching of non-self can feel distant or abstract, but it can be seen in simple ways. Notice how your thoughts and emotions change throughout a single day. In the morning, you may feel confident and cheerful. By afternoon, you might feel irritated or sad. By evening, peaceful again. Which of these is the real you? The truth is, all of them arise and pass away according to causes: sleep, hunger, memories, interactions, and countless unseen factors. When we stop clinging to any of these passing states as me, we begin to taste the freedom the Buddha spoke of. Anatta is not nihilism. It does not deny life, meaning, or morality. Rather, it points to a deeper form of life, one not limited by the story of me. When the burden of self is lifted, the heart becomes lighter, more open, more able to respond to the world with wisdom instead of fear. We act not to protect a fragile identity, but out of natural understanding and care. In this way, non-self is not a cold doctrine, but the very root of compassion. It is because we are not separate that kindness makes sense. It is because we are impermanent that each moment becomes precious. In modern psychology, there is talk of the ego and the narrative self, the stories we build about who we are. The Buddha's teaching cuts through those stories, not by destroying them, but by seeing them as what they are, useful conventions, not ultimate realities. The name, the body, the memories, the opinions, all are tools for communication and functioning in the world, but none are the true essence of a being. When we understand this, life becomes lighter, relationships softer, and our hearts freer from the constant need to prove, defend, or possess. The Buddha's insight into non-self remains one of the most profound challenges ever presented to human thought. It invites us to look directly into the mirror of experience and see that the I we cling to is like a reflection, vivid, compelling, but without substance. When that illusion is seen through, not by argument, but by quiet observation, the mind awakens to a peace beyond ownership, beyond identity. This is not an escape from life. It is life itself, lived fully, fearlessly, and freely. And so, in the end, the teaching of non-self is not about losing who we are, but about discovering that who we think we are was never solid to begin with. It is about waking up from the dream of separation and realizing the vastness of being that was always here. When we let go of I and mine, what remains is not emptiness, but a boundless stillness filled with understanding. That is the freedom the Buddha found, and it waits quietly in each of us, hidden, not beyond the stars, but behind the veil of the word self. After awakening under the Bodhi tree, the Buddha did not simply teach philosophical truths. He offered a practical path, a way to live, to breathe, to see the world differently. His message was never about belief, it was about transformation. Understanding impermanence and non-self is not enough if that understanding remains intellectual. It must be lived, tested, and realized in the movements of daily life. The practice of letting go of desires, attachments, and clinging to identity is the living expression of wisdom. It is the gradual unveiling of freedom. Letting go does not mean rejecting life or running away from the world. The Buddha himself lived in the midst of life, walking through towns and villages, teaching kings and beggars, comforting the sick, and guiding seekers. He never asked his followers to escape the world, but to see it clearly. To let go is to see the truth of things as they are, without the distortion of craving or fear. It is to live with open hands instead of clenched fists. In meditation, we begin to practice this art of letting go. We sit quietly, close our eyes, and observe the mind. Thoughts arise, memories, plans, desires, worries, and instead of chasing them or pushing them away, we simply watch. This watching, this awareness, is the seed of freedom. Each time we see a thought come and go without identifying with it, we are loosening the chain of attachment. Each time we feel an emotion fully without clinging or resistance, we are letting go of the illusion that I am this feeling. Over time, the mind learns a new way of being, still, clear, and unattached. The Buddha compared the process of letting go to holding a burning coal. As long as we cling to it, we suffer. When we release it, the relief is immediate. Yet most of us hold on tightly to our burning coals. Anger, pride, jealousy, regret, because we think they define us. We say, I am angry, I am hurt, I am right. But when we look closely, we see that these emotions are not who we are. They are passing visitors. They arise, they burn for a while, and they fade. The Buddha taught that we can live in the fire or step out of it. The difference is awareness. Letting go also means releasing the endless hunger for control. The human mind constantly tries to shape the world to its liking, to make pleasure stay and pain disappear. But the world does not obey our wishes. Everything changes. The more we fight this truth, the more we suffer. The practice of letting go is the art of surrendering to the flow of conditions without losing awareness. It is not passive acceptance, but active wisdom, the clear recognition that reality is unfolding according to causes, and our peace depends not on controlling it, but on understanding it. The Buddha often used the image of the raft to describe his teachings. He said, "My Dhamma is like a raft used to cross a river. Once you have reached the other shore, you do not carry the raft on your back. you leave it behind. Even the teachings themselves, even the practice of meditation, must ultimately be let go. They are tools, not possessions. Wisdom grows not from grasping doctrines, but from releasing them when they have served their purpose. Letting go, in this sense, is the essence of the spiritual journey, a gradual dropping of all burdens, even the subtle ones of spiritual pride or attachment to enlightenment. In daily life, letting go can take many forms. It might mean forgiving someone who has wronged you, not because they deserve it, but because you no longer wish to carry the weight of resentment. It might mean accepting change, the loss of a loved one, the passing of youth, the shifting of fortunes, with a heart that does not cling. It might mean letting go of the need to be understood, admired, or successful, and instead living truthfully and kindly, regardless of how the world responds. Each act of release is an act of courage, because it asks us to trust the flow of life more than the comfort of control. One of the most subtle attachments is the attachment to the idea of progress. Many practitioners cling to their meditation achievements, their calmness, their insights, or their spiritual identity. They measure themselves and others by invisible standards: how peaceful they are, how wise they seem, how detached they appear. But this too is a form of bondage. The Buddha's path is not about becoming someone better, but about seeing that there is no one to become. True letting go includes letting go of the one who is trying to let go. Only then can the mind rest in the natural simplicity of being. The beauty of this teaching is that it can be practiced anywhere, not just in monasteries or mountains, but in the ordinary moments of human life. When you wash dishes, you can notice the feeling of water on your hands and let go of the rush to finish. When you talk to someone, you can let go of the need to be right and simply listen. When pain arises, you can let go of resistance and feel it as it is. In every breath, there is an invitation to release. The world becomes a field of practice, every experience a teacher, whispering, "Nothing is yours. Let go and be free." The fruits of letting go are not far away. They reveal themselves quietly. As the mind releases its grasping, a gentle peace begins to appear. Not the peace of control, but the peace of openness. Compassion arises naturally, because a mind that clings less suffers less and fears less. Joy becomes simple, like sunlight on water. The Buddha called this state nibbana, the extinguishing of the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion. It is not a place or a heaven, but the cooling of the mind's fever, the freedom from the compulsion to hold. To live in this way is to walk gently through the world, to love without possession, to act without pride, to speak without harm, to move through change without fear. It is to see life not as a battlefield, but as a dance of impermanence. The Buddha did not promise that life would be free from pain. He promised that we could be free from suffering. The difference lies in whether we cling or release, resist or understand. In the end, letting go is not something we do, but something that happens when we see clearly. When the mind truly understands that holding on is suffering, release happens by itself. It is like opening your hand after realizing it has been clenched all along. That moment, simple, silent, complete, is the taste of freedom. It is what the Buddha discovered beneath the Bodhi tree, and what he offered to the world, not a belief to follow, but a freedom to realize, here and now, in the stillness of your own heart. The Buddha's path was never about extremes. He discovered through his own struggle that truth does not dwell in indulgence nor in denial, not in the luxury of the palace nor in the harshness of the forest. It lies instead in a subtle balance, the middle way. This is not merely a doctrine of moderation, but a profound understanding of how life unfolds between opposites, pleasure and pain, gain and loss, success and failure, praise and blame. To walk the middle way is to live in harmony with reality as it is, not as our desires or fears would shape it. It is to let wisdom guide our choices and compassion guide our actions. Before his enlightenment, Siddhartha pushed his body to its limits. He starved himself, held his breath until fainting, and practiced self-torture in the belief that destroying the flesh would free the spirit. But in the silence of exhaustion, he saw that both indulgence and self-denial are traps of the same kind. Both are rooted in craving. One for pleasure, the other for achievement. Freedom, he realized, comes not from controlling life, but from understanding it. The middle way was born from that realization, the way of balance, mindfulness, and awareness in every moment. Living by the middle way means walking through life with eyes open. It means understanding that every experience, pleasant or painful, is part of the unfolding of conditions. When joy arises, we do not cling to it. When sorrow comes, we do not run away. We stay present, steady, and awake. This is not indifference, but deep sensitivity, the courage to feel fully without being enslaved by feeling. It is to live like a tree standing in the wind, flexible yet rooted, bending with the storms, but never broken by them. The middle way is also the foundation of ethics in the Buddha's teaching. He called it sila, the discipline of conduct grounded in wisdom and compassion. To live ethically is not to follow rules out of fear or obedience, but to see clearly the causes of suffering and choose actions that do not perpetuate them. When we refrain from harming others, we are not suppressing our will. We are freeing the heart from the poison of ill will. When we speak truthfully, act kindly, and live honestly, we are aligning ourselves with the natural harmony of existence. Such a life generates peace, not only for ourselves but for all beings we touch. Wisdom, panna, is the other pillar of the middle way. It is the seeing that penetrates the surface of things to their conditional nature. Wisdom knows that everything arises because of causes and ceases when those causes end. Therefore, it does not demand permanence in what is transient, nor selfhood in what is composite. This insight dissolves the illusions that drive craving and fear. A wise mind no longer clings to I and mine, but flows with the ever-changing dance of life. Wisdom does not make one cold or detached. Rather, it opens the heart to a deeper compassion, because when one sees the interdependence of all things, one cannot help but care. Compassion, karuna, is the natural fragrance of wisdom. When we see that every being is struggling with their own ignorance, fear, and craving, the heart softens. Compassion is not pity. It is the understanding that all beings share the same wish to be free from suffering. To act with compassion is to live the truth of non-self, to realize that in helping others, we help ourselves, because the boundary between self and other is an illusion. The middle way, therefore, is not a solitary path. It is a life lived in relationship, guided by empathy and understanding. To practice the middle way in modern life is to live with awareness in a world of extremes. We live in an age of constant stimulation, of endless choices, opinions, and distractions. The mind is pulled in every direction by pleasure, ambition, fear, and comparison. The Buddha's teaching invites us to step out of this storm and return to the quiet center of being. This does not mean rejecting the world, but relating to it differently, with presence instead of grasping, with care instead of control. When the mind finds balance, even the simplest acts become sacred. Eating, walking, working, speaking, all can be done with mindfulness and compassion. A balanced mind is like a clear lake. It reflects things as they are, not as we wish them to be. Such clarity allows wisdom to arise naturally. From wisdom grows understanding, from understanding grows patience, and from patience, peace. The middle way is not about being halfway between two extremes. It is about being fully awake in the midst of life's movements, unmoved by illusion, yet deeply connected to all that lives. The Buddha often described the middle way as the Eightfold Path: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. These are not commandments, but qualities of being, each one supporting the others like spokes of a wheel. Together they form a path that leads from confusion to clarity, from restlessness to stillness, from ignorance to awakening. The Eightfold Path is the middle way in action, wisdom, morality, and concentration woven into the fabric of daily life. When the mind walks this path, it no longer oscillates between grasping and rejecting. It becomes steady, radiant, and kind. Such a mind does not need to escape the world, because it no longer fears it. Joy and sorrow come and go like waves on the sea, and the heart remains serene. resting in the deep truth that all things are transient, interdependent, and free of self. This serenity is not born from ignorance, but from clear seeing. It is the peace of one who has tasted the truth and found it sufficient. In the end, the middle way is not a path we travel, but a way of being that emerges when wisdom and compassion are one. It is the realization that suffering and joy are not enemies, but teachers, each pointing us back to the balance of awareness. When we live in this balance, we do not seek to escape life, nor to possess it. We simply participate, fully, lovingly, and awake. The Buddha called this the path of the heart that neither clings nor resists. It is a quiet revolution, a way of living that transforms not only the one who walks it, but the world that surrounds them. And so the middle way is not merely an ancient teaching. It is a living compass for anyone who seeks peace in a turbulent world. It whispers gently, do not go too far in any direction. Stand in the center of the storm, and you will find stillness. See life clearly, and compassion will arise by itself. Live with balance, and freedom will follow. This is the essence of the Buddha's wisdom, not a philosophy to believe, but a way to live with open eyes, a calm heart, and hands that touch the world gently, leaving peace wherever they go.